Last week, we looked at definition of Nibbana and the qualities. Let's go through the main points again. Whoops, wait, something is wrong, wait. Okay, now, Nibbana refers to a mind in its original state. It is a state that already exists, whether we are enlightened or not. And Nibbana, therefore, does not arise and cease according to causes and conditions because it already exists. So it is unconditioned, which means that we no longer have to depend on the external factors to create the conditions for our happiness. And the unconditioned happiness that is Nibbana is actually the absence of happiness or pain as we know it. And in its place is a feeling of peace. We will have an idea of what this peace is when we come to the section on frequently asked questions about Arahants. Next, Nibbana cannot be reached by logic or reason. Now, the insights are intuitive, okay, which means when we don't need reason or proof. And these insights arise when wisdom matures. And we have to realize Nibbana on our own to truly understand what it is like. No one can realize Nibbana on our behalf. We have to take this journey on our own. Lastly, why do we have to know about Nibbana? Since for most of us, or in fact all of us, is far, far away, right? Because we need right view, okay? We need to know what practice is about. We need to have the right attitude because the right view will give us the right attitude. And we have to be convinced that Nibbana is a worthy goal to work towards. And knowing what we can look forward to will hopefully inspire us as well. Okay, now we moved on. We're going to look at how enlightenment takes place. Now, some Sangha teachers actually prefer to use the word awakening instead of enlightenment because awakening shows an activity, a waking up process that involves direct personal experience. Okay, now in this sutta, the Buddha summarizes the practice from start to finish. Okay, first, when we practice morality, there is freedom from remorse. And the purpose and benefit of non-regret is the feeling of joy or contentment. It also means contentment that comes from knowing ourselves to be blameless. And this joy then leads to rapture. Okay, some of you may know rapture as piti, the Pali word. Okay, it's a very pleasant physical feeling that you can experience during meditation. And this leads to passaddhi, that means a calmness or tranquility, and then to happiness or sukha. It's a very refined mental state of comfort and well-being. Now, these factors in meditation then result in samadhi. It's the state of mind that we need for Dhamma investigation work. Now, a mind that's very still, very silent, unconditionally accepting, neutral, and objective. And then Vipassana puts this mind to work. Now, what comes after this? Disenchantment, dispassion, and knowledge and vision of liberation. Now, in Pali, these three words are known as Nibbida, Viraga, Nirodha. Okay, they're mentioned very frequently in the suttas. Now, Nibbana comes about when your practice matures. You see the true nature of all conditioned things. What's the true nature? Can you remember? Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. And then you are no longer deluded by them. Your mind sobers up. Okay, you are no longer intoxicated with sense pleasures, and the mind automatically turns away from them. no more passion, no more attachment. And no attachment means no more suffering. Okay, total cessation is Nibbana. Okay, remember this Pali word Nirodha that came up last week? Right? Now, the Buddha often mentions this sequence in the suttas. So how long does it take to realize Nibbana? I tell you this, let a wise person come to me who is sincere, honest, and straightforward, and I will instruct him, I will teach him Dhamma. This paragraph seems to imply that a person should already have some Dhamma wisdom in addition to being honest and virtuous and sincere about the practice. In that case, it takes a maximum of 7 years. And let alone 7 years, in 6 years, 5 years, in a fortnight, in 7 days, he can achieve that goal. Now, this time frame is also mentioned in the well-known suttas like Satipatthana and Mahasatipatthana suttas. It's possible for the monks at that time to achieve Nibbana because they had the benefit of the Buddha's guidance. It's even possible for monks now. Okay, but for lay people, especially now, this time frame is not realistic. Okay, what the Buddha says in another sutta is more applicable to us. Just as the ocean has a gradual shelf, a gradual slope, a gradual inclination, with a sudden drop-off only after a long stretch, in the same way, this Dhamma and Vinaya has a gradual training, a gradual performance, a gradual practice with a penetration to noxis only after a long stretch. Noxis here means enlightenment. So, what are the main points, okay, in this section on understanding Nibbana? Okay, for those who are new, just have to remember the main points, okay? Firstly, Nibbana can only be reached through practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. We cannot chant or pray our way to Nibbana. Chanting and prayers can only help the mind to quieten down. And Nibbana is not something we achieve through rites and rituals. We have to put in the effort on samatha and your vipassana practice, starting with right view and then supported by wholesome living based on right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Insights arise when practice matures and are accompanied by the erosion of fetters. We went through, right, the 10 fetters last week. Now, these are intuitive insights. Such intuitive moments may already have happened in our lives, okay? But we cannot call them insights if we were not aware of them or we did not understand what they mean. Let me give you an example. In one of my meditation retreats with a lay teacher, okay, I saw something and I was very excited. Immediately after meditation, I went to him for interview and I told him what I saw. I think he got even more excited than me. Then he went, so, what did you see? What did you see? I absolutely didn't understand what I saw. And my poor teacher was so agitated, he actually asked me to go and walk up and down and think about it, and reflect on it and come back and tell him what I saw. Actually, I still didn't understand. It was such a pity. Okay, whatever I saw, whatever insight just flew past my head, it was wasted because I did not have the wisdom to see it. Okay, so in your life, somewhere, somehow, you may already have insights. Did you understand what you saw? If you didn't, don't you think it's such a waste? Okay, that's why our Dhamma practice is important. Okay, when we are ready for it, the wisdom will arise to help us understand what we see. Nibbana is reached through gradual training, gradual performance, and gradual practice. We don't reach Nibbana in one giant leap. The Buddha's teaching on the 4 stages of enlightenment serve as guidelines to show us how we are changing, where we are in our spiritual journey, and what we can aspire to. So for most people, it will very likely take more than one lifetime to reach full enlightenment. but know that your journey there is not without rewards. Okay, this is an interesting one. Frequently asked questions about Arahants. Now, the first question is, are there any Arahants in the world now? Now, this point can be answered by quoting the Buddha first. Were these mendicants to practice well, the world would not be empty of perfected ones. He said this on the very day he died. Fortunately, there are still monks that live rightly and take their training very seriously, living in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path. One good example is the Forest Sangha in Thailand. They really uphold the ancient tradition that is passed down by the Buddha and his disciples. Are there Arahants in the community of forest monks? We will come to that later. Second question, can we recognize an Arahant if we meet one? The answer is no. If the time has not come for an Arahant to be revealed as such, then no one, not even another Arahant, could recognize it. Now, even the elder Sariputta, the right-hand man to the Buddha, could not tell whether a monk was an Arahant or not. Okay, now at that time, Venerable Sariputta was educating, encouraging, firing up and inspiring Venerable Bhaddiya the dwarf with even more Dhamma talk, thinking that he was still a trainee. Okay, the Buddha saw what happened and then confirmed, but that Venerable Bhaddiya was an Arahant. So do not believe people when they tell you that this or that monk is an Arahant just through observation. There is no standard behavior for Arahants. Okay, they still retain some of their individual character traits, not because of defilements, but through force of habit from this and previous lifetimes. Okay, so they can still behave differently from one another. Third, how does an Arahant experience life? Now, we have included this question, to address the status of Arahantship as given in an interview with Long Po Liam, who is widely acknowledged to be an Arahant. This will give us a clearer picture of what unconditioned happiness is and how Arahants experience life. Now, first, let us just see how he describes dukkha. I try to recall and pin down that which is called dukkha. What is it? I really don't know. I only know how they discern the meaning in terms of conventional language, because dukkha is just something created by common conventions. When the mind has no dukkha, all conventions whatsoever don't exist in the mind. From here, it's very obvious that it's an Arahant, isn't it? Because only an Arahant is totally free from suffering. Okay, so what do you mean by conventions? Now, this is explained in the next few slides. In terms of the sense spheres of living, in terms of living with other people, there will be no experience of likes and dislikes anymore. Okay, male and female, these are just aspects of conventional reality. There will be no more feelings that lead towards objects of sensual pleasure. The experience is, after all those likes and dislikes are simply no longer existent. Now, conventional reality is what we usually see the world. A place full of different and very distinctive things and beings, arousing our likes, our dislikes, our attraction, our aversion for this mind, I, and self. Okay. There are many different phenomena that we might then experience. For example, the nervous system up in the brain feels cool. The experience of sensory contact is not of the kind that leads into a path that gives rise to changes in one's mind. There will be a quality that can be called neither agreeable or disagreeable. Hello. Can everybody try to make sure you're muted? Thank you. Now, remember one of the descriptions of Nibbana as cooling or cooling off? In his interview about his enlightenment experience, Longpo Liam said that a feeling of peacefulness pervaded throughout his whole body. He felt cool, completely light, and at ease. And he said his head felt so cool the whole day and whole night as if there was a fan blowing over it. Okay, it is a reality of nature that is very pure. This means although one sees with one's own eyes what they call beauty, there is nothing beautiful there. Not in a negative sense though, just that there isn't anything. It is an experience of emptiness, all empty. And what is this emptiness? Okay, Longpo Liam explained that it is an emptiness that gives him the feeling of being unaffected and untouched. Okay, and this experience is not one of indifference or being indifferent or being clueless. It is the sense of feeling that there is enough of everything. One is satisfied, one has had enough, there is nothing more that can be added. Now, do you have a clearer picture of what Nibbana is like? Okay, last question. Can lay people be Arahants? Now, there is this belief among some Buddhists that when a lay person becomes an Arahant, he or she must quickly get ordained within 7 days or else die. Now, is this true? First, let's see whether it is possible for a lay person to be an Arahant. Okay, here, Mahanama, a lay follower, is wise. He possesses wisdom directed to rising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative, leading to the complete destruction of suffering. In that way, a lay follower is accomplished in wisdom. Now, in this sutta, the Buddha indicates that it is possible for a lay person to be Arahant. Now, let's look at another sutta. Okay, you can read this on your own. Now here, Mahanama asked how a wise lay follower should counsel another wise lay follower who is seriously ill or dying. Now, the wise lay follower here refers to anyone who is at least a stream enterer or sotapanna. And the Buddha replied that they should be given 4 assurances or consolations. Okay, the first, confidence in triple gem. Okay, we learned earlier, right, that enlightened beings have eroded the fetter of doubt, and therefore they have full confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Moral virtue, an abandonment of anxiety over parents, wife, children, sense pleasures. And in addition, these 3, the persons also encouraged to withdraw their minds from celestial sense pleasure. Okay, that means sense pleasure that you can find in the heavenly realms. The 4th consolation is the one that is related to arahantship. If it says, my mind has been withdrawn from the Brahma world, I've directed my mind to cessation of identity, then Mahanama, I say there is no difference between a lay follower who is thus liberated in mind and a bhikkhu who has been liberated in mind for 100 years. That is between one liberation and the other. Okay, so the Buddha's statements confirm a few things. Number 1, a lay follower can become an Arahant. Number 2, once enlightenment occurs, there is no difference between lay people and monastics. And number 3, a lay person can realize Nibbana upon death. Okay, in fact, Buddha's own father, Suddhodana, was very close to death when he became an Arahant. So if a lay person becomes an Arahant before death, will he die within 7 days of attaining Arahantship if he does not enter monastic life? Now let's look at another conversation between the Buddha and the wanderer Vacchagotta. Now, this is the same Vajragota who approached the Buddha about whether the Tathagata exists or doesn't exist after death. Can you read this on your own?
I can read. Master Gautama, is there any householder who, without abandoning the fetter of householdership on the dissolution of the body, has made an end of suffering?
Now, the fetter of householdership is the attachment to your land, your ornaments, your wealth, etc., things which the householder is concerned with in daily life. Okay, so Vacha, there is no householder who, without abandoning the fetter of householdership on the dissolution of the body, has made an end of suffering. This simply means that there were no Arahants who passed away as a lay person. Now, this is not surprising because if the lay person becomes an Arahant, he would have abandoned all attachments to worldly things and joined the Sangha. So it's a very natural process. Okay, simply because worldly life would no longer hold any meaning for him. But he won't die, lah. Okay, so for question 4, the suttas tell us this. Number 1, it is possible for lay people to realize Nirvana, but lay Arahants, even during the Buddha's time, were very rare. Number 2, once a lay person becomes an Arahant, they will naturally renounce worldly life and join the Sangha order, which gives a life that's more aligned with their state of mental purity. Okay, number 3, this means that no lay person will die an Arahant, but it is possible for a lay person to attain Arahantship on the verge of death. Okay, with that, we finished the section on understanding Nibbana, and then we moved on to practical applications. This is the important part. Okay, back to this 3 phases and 12 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So how do we apply the Third Noble Truth? Now, from here, I'm going to bring everything together, what we also learned in the first and second Noble Truths. Okay, but let's first revise the rain technique, okay, which we did in the first and second Noble Truth. Remember, Jack? All right, what's R? Recognition, do you get it right? Okay, this means we are fully aware of what rises in our mind. So when there is anger, we know there is anger. What's A? We accept or allow what has arisen in the mind to stay without getting lost in feelings and thoughts. Investigation. We investigate our physical and mental experiences in order to see their true nature. And what's N? The last one, non-identification, non-attachment. Now, non-identification means being impartial, not believing that these experiences belong to us. It helps actually to take a step back and we put some distance between us and the object. Okay, then we have to relate what we experience to these 3 universal characteristics. Anicca is impermanence, dukkha is unsatisfactoriness, and anatta is not self. And we keep practicing in this way. This is what you call vipassana practice. Now let's look at an example now. Jack, remember Jack was in hospital because he suffered injuries from a car accident. Now, he's in a lot of pain. Now, this is suffering that cannot be avoided. But physical suffering usually causes mental suffering too. So not being able to move or do anything about his pain brings a lot of frustration. And he feels indignant at the unfairness of it all because it was not his fault. He drove very carefully. It was the other driver who was at fault. And the whole situation makes him very depressed. And because he's preoccupied with his thoughts and emotion and the way he views the whole situation, his suffering increases. Now, these mental states are dukkha. What did Jack perceive as the cause of his suffering? Okay, like most people, it was Jack's natural instinct to blame the driver, the other driver, and also the physical pain. But are they responsible for his suffering, mental suffering? No. What is? His unmet need is the cause. The need to be pain-free and not being confined to the hospital. This is the cause. Okay? These are just the conditions triggering a craving that was not fulfilled. So instead of reacting to the situation in a habitually unskillful manner, he has to turn his mind inwards. Now let's do this vipassana exercise on Jack's behalf. Okay, this was covered in the First Noble Truth, right? We observe the physical and mental reactions. Okay, for those who are not sensitive to the mind, you observe the physical reactions first. Now, this is the First Noble Truth. Here you see suffering. Then know that our own unmet needs is the cause of suffering. This is the Second Noble Truth. Craving causes suffering. And here, okay, we can see cause and effect that is dependent on condition. Okay, this is what we covered First Noble Truth too. Now, when we observe the mind and body this way, we are actually maintaining present moment awareness, which means that we are no longer paying attention to the supporting conditions, which will then cease to occupy our mind. And when we remove this condition, craving will cease. And when craving ceases, effect also ceases. You see the whole process? And this is the Third Noble Truth. So the art of letting go, okay, is to take note of the physical and mental experiences without attaching to them, without picking them up, without getting carried away by perceptions, thoughts, and emotions. Okay, when we do it this way, we take the self out of the whole equation. So letting go simply means letting things be the way they are. And we do all this by using the green technique. Now, at this point, have we completed our Vipassana exercise? Not yet. Huh? What else do we have to do? Okay, from the rise and fall of these mental states, we see change. We see impermanence. We see the unsatisfactory nature of this whole process because we cannot stop these unskillful mental states and therefore dukkha from arising. And we cannot command them to fade. So if that's the case, how can we see these conditioned physical and mental phenomena as mind, I, and self? We have to keep observing suffering, cause of suffering, and cessation of suffering, always in the light of the three universal characteristics. And that's where you will keep accumulating, okay, Dhamma wisdom. Letting go is something that one needs to feel consciously, letting go of holding in our hearts the emotional reactions to experiences and relationships and judgments, how things should or should not be. It is relinquishing the whole of this, letting go of all of it, that is summed up by, in a short teaching, the Buddha gave when he said, all dhammas are not to be clung to. Now, dhammas here refer to conditioned experiences, both pleasant, unpleasant, skillful, and unskillful. Okay, and we have learned that all conditioned phenomena are subject to suffering, right? So by letting go of our desires and craving and our attachment to them, we experience cessation of suffering. Okay, this means that the mind has to know when something has ceased. So when we see dukkha, we have to stay with the experience until the end. Not easy to let things be. Yeah? Why? Because it goes against our ingrained habits. what do we do when we have dukkha? We go find something more pleasant to take the place of what we don't want or don't like. That's what we would do. Okay, to allow this process of cessation to work, we must be willing to suffer. We have to open our minds to suffering, because it is in embracing suffering that suffering ceases. Now, Ajahn Sumedho said that when he first started meditating, he did not understand why he felt a lot of negative emotions, when meditation was supposed to make him happier and kinder. Then, upon reflection, he realized that he had spent a lot of his life trying to run away from these emotions, because he saw himself as being a kind person that did not hate people. So whenever these emotions started creeping in, he would suppress them by either reading, smoking, or snacking. Okay, this happened before he became a monk. So all these negativities that have been suppressed in 30 years of living arose in full force at this time. And it burned itself out through meditation. And it was a process of purification for him. I think some of you would have experienced this. So when we experience strong emotions during meditation, it could very well be due to emotions that have been suppressed for a long time, and they are now making themselves known during meditation. Okay, and because it is in embracing suffering that suffering ceases, this practice is not easy, especially for the beginners, because not only do we dislike confronting our own craving and suffering, we also find it very difficult to let them go. We have to be patient. We have to investigate over and over, time and time again, many, many times, until we understand and are fully sure. The mind will then let go of its own accord. There's no way we can try to force it to let go as long as we haven't investigated enough. Okay, and this letting go automatically will happen when you accumulate enough wisdom. So when we keep seeing things with right view, the letting go becomes more and more natural. Okay, so lastly, how does all this relate to the 5 aggregates? We always have to keep coming back to it. Okay, now when we practice letting go, we are practicing not to get so preoccupied with our body, our feelings, our perceptions, thoughts, and emotions. Okay, we are also practicing to reduce our perception of these 5 aggregates as self. Okay, which means that now this, once we understand the project, it's about the letting go of the khandhas. Khandhas here means the 5 aggregates. So understanding the project means knowing what to do and how to do it with right view. Okay, then, sorry, that notes are supposed to be there. Still a lot of work to do, but at least it becomes much more clear how to do it and what to do. Now, a lot of us start this spiritual journey with a lot of enthusiasm and curiosity. That is actually very good. That is wise wanting or chanda, which we covered in the second noble truth. Okay, but we also have a lot of expectations, don't we? Okay, when we start the practice, we want this, we can get impatient, we want to get results fast, we also look for shortcuts. I personally know of people who do that. Okay, but that's not chanda anymore, is it? It's actually craving or tanha. Now, even when chanda is present, craving or tanha will always be there to seek an opportunity to interfere, take control, or form attachments. The confusion between craving and chanda exists because these 2 qualities are often intertwined, interchangeable, and interdependent. So, for example, wanting to meditate, that's chanda, okay? But craving can interfere in very subtle ways. Like, for example, you want to have very good meditation, like the one you had 3 days ago, where you saw nimitta, or when you have very nice piti, that means physical bliss. And some people, when they meditate after a while, then they say, oh, it would be nice for me to be able to see past lives. And of course, the biggest craving is, I want insights. When are my insights coming? Okay, so it helps to keep reminding ourselves that whether it is a good meditation or a bad one, it doesn't matter. Okay, we don't practice for anything. We practice for the sake of practice. The fact that we put in time and effort in our Dharma practice and we practice correctly is good enough. Progress happens very slowly, bit by bit. It is not possible to force or hurry things in any way. When we have the right attitude, the practice will take care of itself. So apart from what we have already learned in the first and second Noble Truth, what is the main take-home from this section on practical applications? Firstly, while the third Noble Truth teaches us that there can be an end of suffering or putting down of the burden, it is not confined to Nibbana. We can experience little moments of liberation in our daily practice by seeing cessation of suffering over and over again in our daily life. And in every moment of release from suffering, what we experience is peace, stillness, silence, and space. And this is what you mean by a taste of freedom, a taste of Nibbana. And now we move on to objectives of practice. Now we all know, right? Ultimate objective, the end goal is to get rid of all the 10 fetters to realize Nibbana. Nibbana, as we have learned, means cooling. Okay, this is the nature of enlightenment. It is the extinguishing of the fire of craving. Now that's the ultimate goal, to extinguish our attachment to craving that arises from ignorance. And the spiritual journey in Nibbana is a long one. And then most of us here, in fact, all maybe, may not reach this end goal in this life. So what else can we look forward to on our journey there? What other objectives can we use to inspire us to practice? Now, we have looked at objectives of our practice in relation to the first Noble Truth and second Noble Truth. Can you remember? First, to take responsibility for our own suffering and to manage our craving by cultivating skillful qualities, for example, restraint, compassion, letting go or renunciation, patience, and acceptance. And it is possible to do all this because our whole Dharma practice is based on 3 things we can control: what we think, what we say, and what we do. Everything else is governed by causes and conditions and are outside our control. Now let's revisit a scenario from Jack's life to see how our practice can help us to meet all these objectives. Now this is from the first Noble Truth. Jack's mental impulse. Okay, before I come this, in case some of you did not attend the first and second Noble Truth, Jack was done by the girlfriend. Okay, then he saw his ex-girlfriend with someone else. So Jack's mental impulse is to cause the man harm, okay, because he couldn't bear seeing his ex-girlfriend with another man. Now, how did he manage the situation? Now, he exercised restraint, not allowing further action to take place. But he did not reject or suppress the negative mental states arise because he understands that this is a natural process due to causes and conditions. This is acceptance. Then letting go means to let things be, letting these thoughts and emotions rise and cease without holding on, without attaching to them. And then compassion and empathy naturally increase as a result of our meditation practice. So this quality helps Jack to exercise the restraint as well. And the whole process of recognizing the mental states that arise, accepting them and letting them be, is also a training in patience. So on the whole, Jack has managed his aversion the right way and has taken responsibility for his own suffering instead of blaming it on others. And remember, it's not just these 5 qualities that we cultivate in our practice. There's also metta, or what we call goodwill or loving kindness, appreciative joy, gratitude, humility, selflessness, etc. So whatever we do, from dana and observing the 5 precepts to meditation and Dhamma investigation work, no action is wasted, even if we are not gunning for Nibbana in this lifetime. Now, this is because all the skillful things that we think, say, and do, and all the skillful qualities that we cultivate as a result, they serve as conditions for realizing Nibbana. You don't need to check with another person on your progress. You yourself will know when you are very far away, and you will also know when you are getting nearer. Okay, reflect on your own progress once in a while. Don't reflect every day, give it a break, that maybe 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. Ask yourself this: can you exercise restraint better than before? Do you have more compassion? Are you more generous? Are you less restless, more contented? Are you able to let go of possessions, opinions, and beliefs more easily now? Most importantly, are you happier? Okay, we come to the end. Let's do a recap, okay? Now, definition. No words exist to accurately describe or define Nibbana. We have to experience it for ourselves to truly know what it is like. Now, nevertheless, the Buddha gave descriptions of the 4 stages of enlightenment as guidelines, and also to show us what we can look forward to. Now, Nibbana can be realized by anyone because it is essentially the mind in its natural state. It is a mind that is pure, clear, radiant, and peaceful, a mind that no longer has to depend on external sources for happiness and is completely free of suffering. Now, this second section tells us that Nibbana can be realized only through the Noble Eightfold Path, with gradual training, gradual performance, and gradual practice. And insights arise when practice matures and are accompanied by the erosion of fetters. Now we practice letting go by just letting things be. We see the rising of craving. We see the fading and the ceasing. We don't judge, take sides, participate, or interfere with it. And we see what craving or wanting does to us. We examine it in relation to the 3 universal characteristics. By turning our mind inwards to investigate Dhamma, we are training ourselves to see craving and suffering for what they are again and again. And every time we let things be and we experience the silence and peace that comes with it, we have a small taste of Nibbana. Lastly, everything we do in our practice serves as a condition for Nibbana, whether we realized it in this lifetime or in subsequent lifetimes. In essence, we are working towards this. With the gradual reduction of craving and the sense of self. We are not practicing Dhamma to reject the sense world, but to understand it so well that we change our whole perspective and attitude about it. We can then willingly let go of the attachment to things that cause us suffering. And in this way, we rely less and less on the sense world for happiness. In doing so, we slowly work our way towards total cessation of suffering. This means we want nothing. Wanting nothing goes beyond not wanting, because one now accepts the reality that there is nothing worthwhile to be had. Wanting nothing makes it possible to experience that actually there is nothing, only peace. And this is a happiness that arises because you are at peace with the way things are. Okay, so dukkha can be transcended. It can end for good with the realization of Nirvana. And the Buddha called this the highest happiness, the full realization of human potential.